Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate Frisbee. I am the host and editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Ultiworld senior editor Keith Rayner. Keith, Frisbee's back on the table.
Wow, what a day. It's not Disc 7s, but maybe it's better. Maybe it's better. Are you ready to be frisbeeworld.com?
It's time. I just got to get the licensing fee paid out. What the hell are we talking about? If you are not aware already, the AUDL has rebranded as the Ultimate Frisbee Association, the UFA. And if you're wondering how they are able to use the word Frisbee, well, they did indeed come to an agreement, a partnership of sorts, pay a licensing fee to SDI, which is the owner of Whammo Discs, of course, who owns the trademark to the word Frisbee and has for a long time. So we have got the Ultimate Frisbee Association. The league is about to use its own disc beginning in this upcoming 2024 season. That is essentially the Aria Uno that is being kind of rebranded and then maybe tweaked a little bit to the specifications of the UFA. And eventually they plan to have retail distribution of that professional Ultimate Frisbee disc, or I guess just professional Ultimate Frisbee, in retail stores through their partnership with the Whammo parent company, who of course has massive distribution network into all of the sporting goods retailers, etc. Keith, we got a new logo, we got a new name. What's your initial reaction to UFA and away from the AUDL?
Charlie, I want to start with a story of another brand. Well-known brand, perhaps with a blue animal as its logo, purchased by an eccentric billionaire who randomly threw away all of his branding investment that he paid for as part of his unbelievable purchase of this company, in which he vastly overpaid, all for new branding for reasons unknown to anybody, and it's certainly impacted the value of the brand that he purchased. I say all that because I find myself a little bit mystified as to why. I feel like there's greater machinations happening behind the scenes here with the relationship with Whammo and SDI. This all happening right at the same time as the whole Aria purchase is happening. So like clearly there's some disc games afoot, some Frisbee games afoot here, but there's part of me that's like, I don't want new logo, new name like that. If you remember when we talked to Amanda Dallas about when they rebranded Quidditch into quad ball, like changing the name of your sport is a really hard thing to do. And that's not exactly what they're doing here. But rebranding has a cost to it. So I'm not sure why the AUDL has decided this moment is the time to pay that cost. I'm a bit flabbergasted. I've long been somebody tagged me in our Discord and was like, I have to hear what Keith has to say about this because I've been so strongly against Ultimate as a sport name. We don't typically use Frisbee on the site. We don't typically. I've basically excised Frisbee from my vocabulary as an Ultimate media person. But it is better than just Ultimate. Ultimate Frisbee is better than just Ultimate. It's probably better than Ultimate Disc. I don't know if it's better than Disc 7.
It's definitely better than Ultimate Disc. I mean, let me make the bull case.
Yeah, go for it.
I think Ultimate Frisbee Association is a worse name than Major League Ultimate. I would say, like there was some, there's probably UFA kind of has like a bunch of, they couldn't get UFA.com because it's like some online, like animal and outdoor retail site where you can buy like chicken coops and stuff like that. So that's UFA.com. So then instead they have to have the website for the league is now watchufatv.com, which is just horrendous. You don't want to have such a difficult title for your website, but it is what it is. As just a name itself, Ultimate Frisbee Association, here's my issues with it. The things that I like. Ultimate Frisbee, people know what that is. Ultimate Disc, people don't know what that is. If you tell somebody, oh, American Ultimate Disc League, they probably don't know what that means. That doesn't mean anything to them. But if you say Professional Ultimate Frisbee Association, they're like, oh, I know what Ultimate Frisbee is, because that's the colloquial name for the sport. That's what every non-hardcore Ultimate player calls Ultimate Frisbee. And so I think that part of it makes sense. It's going to give them much better search presence long-term on, Google searches and things like that. And I don't know, it's just like they kind of went classic sports branding here. They've got the red and blue logo. They've got the silhouette with the laying out guy. They've got UFA. And, it sounds a little bit like UFC or NBA. Like, we know what that means. I guess my issue is that right now it feels like UPA, right? It feels like what you would call the governing body and not a semi-pro sports league. But I think that's mostly because we're not used to it. So I think people will grow into calling it the UFA. And, it sounds weird right now because change is weird, and AUDL, you're used to saying it. But like, really, AUDL and their original logo, horrible names. So I think this is clearly an upgrade. Just from AUDL to UFA is an upgrade. I question whether it's worth it, given that they had to, get a much worse URL. All of their social media handles are Watch UFA TV, which, like, I guess we're getting the message what they want us to do. They want us to pay for a subscription and watch the sport, because that's where they make a lot of their money. So I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it's like some kind of silver bullet either. I think it's gonna kind of just end up being pretty neutral.
It's funny to me that you mentioned the logo, which overall I actually like, but in their announcement when they talk about the logo, they said that the logo has traditional blue representing the unlimited sky and global reach of Ultimate, and classic red, which has been used in our league's color palette since 2012, a legendary combination befitting many of North America's most storied professional sports leagues. Like, very clearly, it even says that they want to reflect other professional sports brands. Like, that sounds a little too thirsty for me for your public branding announcement. A little too like us too, yeah, well, pick me. But it overall, it actually looks good. So I'm mostly just nitpicking on the wording. Also, this makes me think of, do you remember when that TikTok went viral from that account? It's Lachlan Fairbairn, but about the two guys, and one guy's trying to get him to call it a Frisbee, and the other guy's like saying it's a flying disc, and they like have an intense argument about it.
I have not seen that.
Oh, do you want to go play with my flying disc?
Your what?
I bought a new flying disc. Do you want to go play with it?
A Frisbee?
Oh, common mistake. Many people think this is a Frisbee, but it's actually not made by the Whammo company, so it's a flying disc.
Lachlan, that's a goddamn Frisbee.
Oh, common mistake. Many people think this is a Frisbee.
Lachlan!
What?
Call it a Frisbee.
I can't call it a Frisbee.
Why not?
Because it's not a Frisbee, it's a flying disc.
Just call it a Frisbee.
Well, I'm not going to call it that.
Are you a maniac?
Do you call this a spoon?
No.
Why not?
Because it's a fork.
And this isn't a Frisbee. It's a flying disc.
Lachlan, are you having a mental breakdown?
Why do you think every time you see a Frisbee that's not made by the Frisbee company, it says flying disc?
I honestly haven't ever even thought about that.
Or maybe it's time you started thinking about things.
Whatever. Do you want to go play?
Play what?
Frisbee.
No.
What do you want me to say? Do you want to go play flying disc?
Yes.
What about ultimate Frisbee? Do you have a problem with that?
Don't you mean ultimate flying disc?
Oh my god, Lachlan, that's literally fucked.
Okay, that was a joke, but not many people know that the sport isn't actually called ultimate Frisbee.
It literally is.
It's just called ultimate because the term Frisbee is trademarked by the Whammo company and you can't use it.
What?
See?
Okay, you're not even wrong, but only a psycho would refuse to call it ultimate Frisbee.
Well, I think you're a psycho for refusing to adhere to legal naming conventions.
All right, Keith. Well, that's exactly how the conversations go around the Ultiworld offices. So I had not seen that.
They captured the sentiments of this discussion very well, I think.
I feel like somehow the the UFA needs to like make a parody version of this. I don't know. I don't know exactly what the
just
concept
pay these
is,
people to pay these people to be in an ad for the AUDL,
Yes,
like to make a TikTok video.
That's it.
Advertising the UFA.
Influencer marketing for the UFA. 100%.
Go for it.
So yeah, other notes from this whole thing, they're going to start trying to sell the Frisbees in stores starting in 2025. That actually I think could be pretty interesting because, you know, the Whammo disc itself, as we all know, is a bad Ultimate Frisbee disc. It is not a good disc. It maybe gets a little bit more hate than it deserves, but like it is clearly inferior to the Ultrastar and to the Aria. We haven't really talked that much about the whole Aria thing. Maybe you did while I was out on paternity leave, but you know, people are like, "Oh, I can't believe they're going to switch discs." The Aria is a great disc. I'm sorry. No one's going to have a problem with it. We've used the Aria as the official game disc at the last 2 high school national invites. It's been great. The kids have done an awesome job with no issues because it basically flies exactly the same, and it's just a great disc. So I think that, can you upsell people to a professional Ultimate Frisbee disc in a store? I mean, I think even a casual player or someone who's just throwing around on the beach will notice the difference in quality.
Charlie, is an Aria disc now a Frisbee?
I think they're literally going to call it a professional Ultimate Frisbee. So yes, I think Aria is dead. I'm assuming that this will be released as like a Whammo product in some way.
That part I'm still curious about how that plays out, but it's immaterial. It's more funny than anything else. But overall, yeah, I totally agree with your take that if it had always been the UFA, I think we probably would have been cool with that. But you know, now they have to have, like you mentioned, the goofy social media handle. Like there's going to be some jokes, and then over time we'll forget about this. They also have this branded Super Series, which sounds like it's basically going to be their new game of the week, which they'll be streaming live on YouTube. That's like not entirely new information, but them branding it as the Super Series is kind of new. We may also see some of those streams on social media channels outside of YouTube. So, you know, maybe you'll catch it streaming live on X. Who knows? But
this is a smart move by the AUDL.
We don't know how much it costs them, right, to do this.
Well, fair, but like they're broadcasting the games anyway themselves in the past. It's not like Fox Sports was paying for the productions, you know, like this was still Luke Johnson and company producing the games. And now those games are going to be much more easily accessible. And then, you know, if you're into it, then you watch UFA TV and get a subscription. I just think it's like going to be a lot easier for them to get reach by going back to YouTube with its biggest games.
Probably good, although, you know, does it help with watch UFA TV? I don't know about that part. Watch UFA. Maybe they need to get watch UFA on YouTube also as a handle.
YT or TV YT. I don't know. I feel like the league is recognizing that it needs to be sort of digital first and not try to fight the cable wars, because it's just like a losing battle. The audience isn't there. The whole cable industry is like drying up. ESPN is trying to sell itself to the NFL. Like this is not the time to try to get some big cable deal. And so, you know, committing to your own platform, making it easier for people to watch online, trying to grow basically an online fan base. I mean, that's where the AUDL has had success. The UFA.
Agreed.
So we'll see. The immediate like feedback that I've seen in the Ultiworld Discord and over on Reddit, people don't seem in love with it. There are some people who are excited about the branding change, but a lot of people are saying it's stupid, bad. But people don't like change. I think everyone's going to get used to it pretty quick.
And this is like not entirely, I have kind of floated the idea that we should just get Whammo to let people use Frisbee. Like we've talked so much about the name of the sport, particularly me. And so we should just, like, Whammo should want us as a community to be Ultimate Frisbee. Like it's basically a
100%.
giant ad for their product. So like, why wouldn't they? They should be paying us to change the name of the sport to Ultimate Frisbee. Like they should call Ulti-World and be like, you should call it Ultimate Frisbee. So, you know, we are unifying a weird schism in our like language around the game, which I guess is probably for the better.
You know, I was just going to say, I was thinking like UFL would be better than UFA. Ultimate Frisbee League.
Yeah, I don't know that. Surely that's taken, right?
That's the thing. It's the new football league, the United Football League. That's like the next iteration of the spring football. That's trying to be the secondary thing after the NFL.
Yeah. So if they had waited 2 weeks, it probably would have been available again. Those second and third football leagues just like come and go. Like
I know the XFL and the USFL merged, and now they have the UFL. So instead, they had to go UFA. It feels like a throwback to the UPA of the past.
It does, although the first thing I think of is UFO every time.
What are you going to do? There's a lot of acronyms. All right. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the new rule set, because every 2 years they come out with new rules, and we've got new rules for 2024. You need to know what's in them. We're going to break it down. We'll be back. Welcome back to Deep Look. Before we get to the new rules for 2024 and 2025, we've got the Deep Look question of the week. Keith, what do we got?
This question comes in from Tanner. The question is, when should we expect to see movement on Tom Crawford's successor and the new strategic plan?
Well, okay. The new strategic plan, that's underway. I mean, things don't happen overnight, but if you look at all of the stuff released in the club working group, the youth working group, we talked about this last week on the show or 2 weeks ago. That is all reflective of the new priorities in the new strategic plan. And they've already hired a brand new director of youth, and they're starting to like work on implementing these changes. I know how quickly these things will happen across the board. I mean, it's not like USA Ultimate is speedy with making change. So I wouldn't, expect things to happen super fast, but it's already happening. As to when Tom Crawford's successor search will start, I would imagine that if it's clear that the board is ready to move on and hire a new person, and Tom is going to be done at the end of his contract at the end of this year, that they're going to begin that process probably sometime in the next couple months. I mean, I would think that they would want to have somebody ready to go for January 1st, 2025 to step into that role. So it's unclear whether that's going to be a publicly discussed process or if that's something that's only going to happen at the board level. What do you think, Keith?
Well, working in reverse, I mean, the Tom Crawford thing, it's kind of like when you got a high draft pick and you have a GM who's on the way out. You want to give the new GM the chance to make the draft pick, to start making impactful decisions that'll be a part of the future of the franchise. And the same kind of thing is at play here. You want to have somebody in place to steward this new vision of the strategic plan. Even though they didn't necessarily help develop it, they are helping execute the will of the membership and of the leadership of the organization. So I agree that with the launch of the new strategic plan, you would think that would be the time in which they would want to have somebody else in place. It's unless they were going to like elevate from within, I'm a little worried about that timeline necessarily. It feels like we're starting to see some shifts that feel like they're influenced by the new strategic plan, even though we haven't seen the actual layout of like, here's our roadmap. Here's the actual structural things we're going to do differently in order to execute on our vision for the new strategic plan. That's the part I think Tanner is looking for and what we're all looking for. I mean, I'm definitely looking for like, what are going to be the concrete, tangible changes that are out there to help grow Youth Ultimate, which is now the number one stated goal. So how are we actually going to see that happen? I'm very curious to hear what that's going to be. But I'm not sure if I expect that to come out within the next 6 months. And it's weird that may happen without the input of a potential new head of the organization. So I feel like it's a little incongruous, the two timelines, but they are what they are. So yeah, I agree with you though. Generally, I expect to see somebody else at the head of the organization by the start of 2025. And I expect to see the strategic plan laid out within the next 6 months before club season.
Well, I mean, the strategic plan is already laid out. You can go to their website.
Yeah, but you remember when we talked to BVH here on the show, they had recommendations, guidelines, like a general attitude. That is what they had put forth so far. And then next up was the actual strategic steps. Here's what we're going to do differently in order to achieve these goals.
Sure.
Here are the actual mechanics of change.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where past strategic plans have felt a little iffy to me. You know, it's like, let's list every possible thing that we want to do, put it all into this thing, and then what? The level of prioritization is unclear, and then you kind of get muddy policies and kind of a malaise that the sport has been in for a while. Well, I mean, I go back to this, right? It's not just COVID. We've been flat as a sport for growth for a long time, like going back to like 2017-ish. And membership is still not recovered to pre-COVID levels, although I think probably we'll get there this year. And like, it feels like things are back moving again. And so I'm very encouraged by the general sentiment and proposals that they are saying that they're going to focus on, because I think it's actually a change in the approach to what they're doing. Like more technology, more support for local disc orgs, more focus on youth. I mean, we're seeing those things play out.
Yeah, but I'm waiting for more like of, I want an official, like, okay, we have hired a new development team to build a new scoreboarder from the ground up.
You want to hear the specifics.
We're hiring an additional 2 youth coordinators to help, local youth-based orgs. Like we're launching a new sponsorship program for this and that. Like we have a new agreement with this partner to help train coaches or to provide, concussion and protocol and training and stuff that coaches need. Like these are the types of like actual things that are going to be in service of those general goals that I think we would expect to see announced in a cohesive plan.
So let me give them some credit. As mentioned, they have already hired a new youth director and created a new department that is youth only. That has happened. Also, they have hired an app developer. So they now have 2 technology people on staff. That I don't know when that his name is Jason Mongaris, web application developer. So I think probably what you're going to see is like updates significantly to the front and back end of USA Ultimate's website. His about page, he joined December 2023. So it's been a month. And it says he's responsible for maintaining the website of USA Ultimate. He's worked for 20 years in software development. And that's pretty much all that it says. But I think, to me, any further investment in their IT and development is just massive. So like that's happened. They hired him.
These are good changes. And I imagine that the new youth department is still kind of investigating what exactly they want to do next. Like what's going to be their plan for the next 3 years. And I know for a fact they're talking to local disc orgs about what they need. So they're formulating the plan, and this is the typical process for USA Ultimate. Even talking to Pavel, they're gonna get a group of people, get some surveys, do some phone calls, do some meetings, town halls, all that kind of stuff. Like that is how this organization operates. So I'm not surprised that is part of forming this strategic plan. But at some point, I'm gonna want to see an actual organized list of things they're intended to do.
I hear that. Now, the question I think is, what kind of person are you looking for as the next director, next CEO? Do you want to see an outsider with administrative experience at the C-suite level, or do you think that they should hire someone from the Ultimate world?
Are you asking rhetorically, or are you asking me?
I'm asking you.
MKBHD is the most popular person. Like let's
Oh my God.
let's do it. Now he runs Ultimate.
You only have to pay him, $10 million a year to switch
I know.
careers.
We're actually going to run it via AI. There's an AI executive. I think that it is fully possible for an outsider to bring a fresh perspective to the community, but what are they bringing to the table? What is their previous experience inform them? I mean, we all kind of know Crawford as the Olympics guy. Like that was his background, right? That was his calling card, and how I think a lot
That's
of people
why we hired
identified
him. Let's be honest.
We needed an outsider to have that. There was nobody inside with that experience. So if you're thinking about the future as being something about the bottom line of the organization, maybe you're hiring someone who's a CFO. And if you're thinking about youth, which is where they're at, maybe you're hiring somebody who's coming from outside of Ultimate, who's already successfully grown youth participation in another sport. I think that would be a totally reasonable find. You find somebody who is a part of growing youth soccer or youth lacrosse or whatever. Like I could see that being the next person who leads this organization coming from outside, because inside of Ultimate, there's a very small handful of people who have had a lot of success in that area and have the background of managing such a large platform as they would being in this role at USA Ultimate. Obviously, it's not just going to be youth. You're not the youth director. You're more than that. But that's what I would be thinking about if I'm hiring for this position. So I don't necessarily care so much whether it's somebody who's inside or outside of Ultimate now. I want to know what they bring to the table. And if we can find that person within Ultimate, cool. But that's obviously going to be a limiting factor. So I would not let that stop me from trying to find the right person.
All right, let's turn our attention to the new rule set 2024-2025. This is not a set of seismic changes, that's for sure. A much smaller overall update than the previous one.
As someone in our Discord put it as the patch notes. We're going over the patch notes here.
Yes, that feels right. This is not a major change, but we do have some updates of substance, and so we want to run through the stuff that you need to know. Mostly we're going to look at the practical changes for regular everyday Ultimate players and not the little fringe notes at the very, very edge cases of things. So Keith, what would you ID as number one change here? Biggest, most notable?
Well, I'll tell you what's not there. First thing I do when I get these rules update, Charlie, Control F or Command F, I guess, on a Mac, substitutions on timeouts. It's not there. So don't bother. Don't bother looking. Okay. The most important change, the one that I actually think there's two changes to me that are the biggest changes, and I'm trying to decide which one I think is the biggest one. I think the biggest is probably as it pertains to travels. They've updated the travel rule essentially to include language that says that small toe drags, as they're called, during the release of a throw, are basically impossible for the marker to be able to see, while also being able to see when the disc is released. And so those infractions should mostly be ignored. This is kind of like a more structured language around the idea that if the travel doesn't affect play, if it doesn't convey an advantage to the thrower, I think that's basically what this is going for, but also while simultaneously recognizing that it would be impossible for a marker to both be looking at someone's foot and seeing the release of the disc. Not impossible, but highly unlikely that someone could both accurately see when the disc leaves the thrower's hand and where their foot is moving at the same time while being on the mark. So I don't think that's actually totally unreasonable. I think we talked about how travels feel both overcalled and overdone. There is too much traveling and too much traveling called. I don't know how that's possible. It's like childcare costs. There's too low of a supply and too high of a cost. It doesn't make any sense, right? But it's clearly something's wrong. So I'm glad that they're trying to do something to address the travel issue.
I'm really uncertain about this, because the fact is, it is advantageous to be able to have small travels. If you can load more weight and transfer more weight into your step leg off of your pivot foot leg, and even if that's just a little bit of an inch or two drag, that is a big advantage. So this is a bigger change than I think it might look at first glance. This is very much deterring travel calls unless somebody is doing something egregious, like, a huge, slide of the pivot foot in order to step around a mark, or, the obvious travels like turning the corner and all those things are still going to be called. But, it explicitly says in a sort of sub note to the rules, defenders should err toward allowing play to continue if the drag causing the travel is less than 2 inches. In addition, remember that a player must only make a call where the infraction is significant enough to affect play. What? Like, it's basically like, stop calling travels, everybody. So
We'll stop calling ticky-tack travels.
I guess, but like my point is that a 2-inch drag of your pivot foot doesn't sound like a lot, but it actually is a real advantage to be able to move more weight off of that pivot foot leg. So if you're a purist and you're like, no, you got to keep a pivot foot, like that is part of the challenge of throwing in Ultimate. Otherwise, we're disc golf.
Isn't that good? Disc golf has all the money and success. Like, don't we want to be disc golf?
I think this is a really interesting rule change to me because it's very much prioritizing flow of the game over like a purity. And purity has been like the bedrock of these rules for so long that like I am so thankful in some ways that we're getting this change because it signals openness to me for more substantive changes in the future. People are going to start arguing about this. They're going to be like, yes, I traveled, but it was only 2 inches. You can't call it.
We're both big NBA fans. So this is the gather step of Ultimate Frisbee.
100%.
You know what I mean? Like, designed to make the game flow and look better, more exciting. This could enable more exciting and interesting throws. But for a purist, they could feel like it's all wrong. Like, well, what's going on here? Why is that foot moving and no one's saying anything about it?
I'm really interested in how people feel about this because I think this is like a bigger than it seems rule change. At the highest levels, already there's not a lot of travel calling happening. Like at the top of club, people don't call the tiki-track travels for the most part. Now, are there spite travel calls? Yes, we see that. But mostly top players have just accepted that there's going to be small traveling. And it's like, if it's an open side throw and you drag your pivot foot slightly, that's not affecting play. Now, the question is, what if it's a 2-inch toe drag to get that little bit of extra separation on a break mark throw? Then it's like, well, how do we decide whether that's affecting play or not? Because it's not nothing.
And, it seems like those travel calls are like, 80% of all travel calls in Elite Ultimate happen when the game is like 12-11 and on from there, right? Like suddenly everyone starts traveling a lot more when the game's really close in the last few points. You know what I mean? So that's where I feel like you're more likely to see one of these arguments spout up.
All right. The next one that I'll bring up, Keith, is that, and this will apply both to more to observed games than unobserved, certainly, but the game is going to be tightened up a little bit. Half times are now uniformly 7 minutes instead of 10. This has been happening in practice quite a bit at top USA Ultimate tournaments, but a lot of tournaments still had 10-minute half times, which frankly feels too long. So I really like this change because 7 minutes feels like the right amount of time to get a break, get some shade, get some water, and then let's play. Also, time between points is being reduced. Essentially, they're cutting everything by 5 seconds. So back in pre-COVID, we had 90 seconds between points. Then they moved it to 85. Now it's 80. So we've got 80 seconds to pull, 60 seconds for the offense to mark readiness, or I guess 50 seconds for the offense to mark readiness. So this is a small change, but as we start, if we keep doing this 5 seconds at a time, eventually it's going to like really pick up the pace of the game. I would love to see this be more aggressive, Keith, and cut down to 70 seconds between points, but I'll take it.
That may be the intended endpoint here. You know, that we may see another 5 seconds next patch. Then after that, another 5 seconds. You know, they're just working their way, easing
Boiling
everybody
the frog
into it. You know,
down to 0 seconds between points.
just it's
Make it
nonstop play. Yeah. I'm a little cooler, I think, on 7-minute halves, just from like my own personal experience at like, you know, mid-level college tournaments. You go at halftime, and first thing a bunch of people do is turn around and be like, "Can I go to the bathroom?" You know, and so by the time they get back from the bathroom, going to especially if you had to use porta potties or whatever, time they get back, you need that 5 minutes to have enough time to have a huddle and cheer and go back out. So with 7 minutes, you're going to be kind of close. Some people are going to miss the huddle talk, I think, or your teams. We're going to see the out of halftime cheer become non-existent. But also, I've seen way too many teams go well over 10 minutes. This was a problem with the between points thing too at unobserved play. So maybe the 7-minute half will actually be like a 10-minute half at unobserved play, and things will move more smoothly this way. You know, maybe this is for the better in that way. But ultimately, I'm into shortening the time between points and trying to smooth out game times a little bit.
All right, another one here. I don't know if we've talked about this one yet. On a throw, the thrower's possession ends when they are no longer in contact with the disc. So it's not about whether or not you have a grip on the disc. It's about whether you are physically touching the disc. That still constitutes possession. So if you're throwing a push pass and you have your index finger on the outside of the rim and you still got your fingertip on it and it gets hand blocked, that's a foul. I think there's other circumstances where you can imagine like those bang situations, you know, was it a hand block or did you still have possession? This is now very much in favor of the offense and kind of clarifying what are often constantly contested foul calls.
Yeah, to me, this is very much like it's just kind of shifting that conversation in favor of the offense. Like you're going to have to lean towards the thrower in that case because those plays happen so fast. It's so hard. Like even the defender probably can't even really tell. Like if you're the defender, it's not really reasonable to ask, do you know that this person was not touching the disc at all anymore? Like can't feel your fingertips. So like, I think this is it's basically more like air towards that the thrower had possession. If you're going for point blocks, don't do it by reaching forward into the thrower's space. You know, keep your hand back, make them throw into you. In a lot of cases, so I think it's a little shift. It's subtle, but it does feel like it's offense's advantage in this case.
What else we got, Keith?
So they introduced halftime caps. I think 2 sets of rule changes ago. So we've seen a little bit more focus around halftime. But as it relates to caps in general that occur during halftime, the way that I understood it before was if you had a cap go off during halftime, you would then come out.
A soft cap or a hard cap?
A soft cap or hard cap. During the halftime break, you would count the first point of the second half as in progress, and you wouldn't put in place the effects of the cap until after that point had concluded. Right? Basically, as soon as the first half ended, the second half was already in progress. Now you are not to do that. So if you have a cap go off during halftime, you don't count the first point as in progress. You come out of half with the effects of the cap on. So if you were going to add one to the teams with the leading score and that cap goes off during halftime, that point out of half, you are playing to that new score. You are not setting the new score after that point concludes.
Right. And if the hard cap goes off, game is over.
Correct.
So basically, if you have a game that's just like horrible, they're like, let's get it over with. Because I do think that, you know, when you have a game, and I think this is typical at lower levels or when it's really, really windy and you're getting to a soft cap and it's halftime, you know, it's 8-7 and you've already played for 95 minutes. it's like, okay, let's not make this worse. Let's end this game. So now it's game to 9, and we're not going to drag it out further. And if you somehow get the hard cap inside of halftime, let's put everybody out of their misery. This just makes sense from a, game flow and like keeping rounds on time, because otherwise you can end up with really games going way over their time limit because
this is
teams
a
are struggling to score. This is a mercy rule, right? It's like, let's get to the next round. Much more important for lower levels of play. This is a new addition. This is specifically stated. Players may not use their extended arms or legs to obstruct the movement of an opponent. It does clarify and say that extended arms and legs during a jump to like make a play on the disc is not considered extended arms and legs. So you're allowed to jump. But you can't, arm bar, box out, those kinds of things, using your arms or legs to prevent players from going around you. I was already under the impression that this was a rule, Keith, but now it's very clearly stated.
Yeah, most of the other things that we have seen in this rule set are really just are adding clarifications. There's a lot of adding of examples. There's a lot of stuff in the beginning about spirit of the game, kind of cleaning up the language around spirit of the game. So that is the majority of the changes in this set of rules. I discovered one thing was there was a little bit of language change around how coaches and players who are not actively in the game can interact with calls happening on the field. I've seen some confusion around this in the past. If there's a call on the field, can players consult coaches about the call? And this makes it very clear they cannot ask for the coach's opinion of the call during play. You can talk about it after play concludes, but they can ask for rules clarifications from coaches on the sideline. Coaches and sideline players are not supposed to interject, except to potentially say, I may have something to add to this, but otherwise you're not really supposed to interject unless referred to from play. I think this, the disc even mentions the rules even mention novice players. Like this is intended, for preseason fall tournaments, for youth tournament. Like this is stuff that they are mostly going to see, not at nationals, but it is an available tool.
Yeah, I no more being like, hey, keep it on the field. Like when a coach is like trying to explain what the rule is to a rookie, like we're not going to have to keep it on the field anymore. In fact, the sideline is allowed to offer its opinion on calls if asked by the players on the field. So like that, I want to kill the idea that only the players involved are allowed to discuss something.
Now here's a question I have, and then maybe somebody out there can answer this for me. If you're a coach and you see two players on opposing teams, they have a call, they talk about the rules, and they adjudicate the rules incorrectly, but in agreement with each other. Like they're like, okay, this is what should happen. And it's not the correct rule. It's not the way the rule is written. And they agree. They don't consult the sideline. They don't ask the coaches. Both teams are like, yep, this is what we're going to do, but it's wrong by the letter of the rule. Is someone on the sideline able to interject to correctly apply the rule? That is unclear to me. I think no. Based on the way I'm reading this, you are not. So it is more important to preserve the integrity of the agency of the players on the field than it is to correctly follow the rules, is how I'm reading this. But
I mean, if there's
I've encountered this situation in my own life, so I'm curious what the actual thoughts are on it.
I think if you're unsure about a rule, ask someone who knows, and don't just, get browbeaten by your opponent into agreeing with them. I once pulled a rule book out at Summer League because somebody was disagreeing with what was my correct assessment of the rule.
Everybody knows somebody who's been that person. Like everybody knows somebody who pulled out the rule book.
Had to do it. I was nice about it. I think I happened after the point, and I was like, hey, look, this is why that. And the guy was like, oh, yeah, you're totally right. So it was fine.
I used to carry one in my bag, but now it's on the app, so I don't need it anymore. I don't need the actual book.
It is nice to have the rules in the app. It's
Control
really nice.
F. You can't do that with paper.
It's true. All right. Let us know your thoughts on the rules. Do you like these new rule changes? Don't like them? Wish that there had been more done, or you want to see more changes? What would you like to see in future updates? We'll get our next one ahead of the 2026 season. Email us, deeplook@ultiworld.com. Hit us up on X @deeplookpod, or find us in the Ultiworld Discord as a subscriber. That is going to do it for this edition of Deep Look. Make sure to join us for our subscriber bonus segment, Out the Back. We're going to be looking at the top 25 college teams, the preseason top 25. So if you're a subscriber, you get early access to the top 25 as we roll it out this week. And we're super excited to get this college season rolling. Keith, we got a couple tournaments coming up this weekend.
We do. This is like really the opening weekend of College Ultimate. Not a lot of major events. Pres Day qualifiers, Starkville qualifiers. I think the women's division of Carolina Kickoff is this weekend. So you're starting to see these first couple of college events. There will be sanctioned College Ultimate though this weekend. Those are the three events I believe that are on USAU's calendar. So get ready, folks. We'll have our first games in the books next time you hear the show.
Super exciting. So join with a subscription today, ultiworld.com/subscribe. Get ready for live college action. We've got our first broadcast coming up next weekend at the Carolina Kickoff and Santa Barbara Invite. Multiple games per round coming your way, and really excited to get this season off and rolling. And we'll talk top 25. See you there.